Morning.
Thank you, Nicole, for that. Good morning, everybody. Welcome,
Morning.
welcome to the December 11th, 2025 meeting of the Town Subcommittee of the Expenditures and Revenue Study Committee. I want to make sure we have a quorum. Looks like everyone is here. There's Ruth Ellen, Janet, John, and I. Okay, great. And welcome to Lincoln, Charlie, and Melissa. Thank you very much. And Ann, yes, thank you for being here. First item of business is to review and approve the minutes that were produced by John Doggett. Thank you, John, for that.
You're welcome.
Before we get too much farther, is there someone who will volunteer to take the minutes for today's meeting?
In the absence of any chorus of yeses,
Yeah.
I would be happy to do it.
All right, well,
and on the understanding that I'm going to do. I'm not going to be taking notes during the meeting, but I'm going to
Right.
consult the transcript afterwards, and
Of course,
and the
Nicole,
videotape will be available.
and Nicole will send you the AI transcript, which is
Yes, thanks.
All right, thank you, John. And at this point, we do have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday, the 18th, which would be the last meeting scheduled, I think, for December. It would be great if you could have the minutes by then, so we could, at least before then, so we could review them before the meeting, John. And hopefully that'll be, something you can do. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So are there any discussions about the minutes that were provided by John?
And this is the minutes of the meeting of which date?
12/4. 12/4. Everything else has been completed from a minutes point of view. I did notice that not everything is still updated, I believe, on the expenditure and revenues website. John, you may not have been you missed a meeting or two. Charlie, I believe it was Charlie Young. If I get the names of who participated, I'm sorry, but I apologize in advance. Nicole, Charlie Young, maybe others had produced on the Expenditure and Revenue Study Committee site, John and Scott, for your information, the complete like docket of all meetings of all 4 committees, the big one and the 3 subcommittees on the same webpage as something we asked for back in early November. And
yeah,
so it's all in one place. You can go through and find all the meeting agendas, the meeting materials, the attachments are all on the same page, which is incredibly helpful. The one thing that we're still waiting for is, and this is maybe a item for Nicole or Charlie, who is helping her. There are some that are just not done yet. In other words, it's behind a little bit. Like some of the meeting agendas aren't hyperlinks, the meeting minutes aren't hyperlinks, even though they were already approved. And I realize there's a torrent of these things because so many things are going on at once, but it would be helpful to have it up to date also. So that's just a comment I'm going to make. That it's really good to have that, but we don't want to let it get too far behind as well. Maybe we can catch up soon and have it all up to date. Are there any discussion on the minutes produced by John? Okay, I'm going to assume that people had a chance to take a look at it. I certainly did, and I appreciated what he did, and also took, again, John Van Squire, for your information, it looks very much like John took a serious look at the AI transcript. It has a kind of structure to the minutes, which I've used as well when I was doing it with Ruth Ellen, and is quite helpful and gives a good flavor of what happened at the meeting. So.
Great.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'll call for a motion to accept the minutes of 12/4 as written.
So moved.
Any second?
Second
by Ruth Ellen. We'll go do a quick roll call. John Doggett?
Yes.
The author, of course, says yes. Of course, John. Thank you. That's amazing. Ruth Ellen,
Yes.
Janet,
Yes.
and John Van Scoyac.
Abstain.
Abstain as you weren't here. I was
Yeah.
thinking that might happen. Okay, and I will vote yes as well. So we have 4 yeses, 1 abstention. The minutes passed. Thank you again, John. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. I'm sorry. Oh, someone else mentioned something. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to, the only other item on the agenda other than new business is to take a look at our town subcommittee report. This particular item has been on my mind quite a lot for the last month because we've gotten a lot of presentations early on as a full committee and then more as a subcommittee from a lot of people. And it's been my concern that either it was so much material that the 5 of us, I'm including JVS while you were away, but I'm certain the 5 of us, it would be just too much to pull together and that we'd sort of suffer from this lack of starting because it's just so much to do. So I took a stab at it before last week's meeting and produced a set of questions and a format that I thought might be helpful. We discussed that last week. And then pursuant to that, I called John Doggett and asked him if he might be able to work with me on trying to put a little bit more of the flesh on this. In parallel, Janet had volunteered last week to create some written material on her own as well, which was really good, and it's in this document on what a structural deficit is and how it relates to the Brookline, as well as debt exclusions. And so what happened in the last 2 or 3 days, and I know everyone's busy and there's so much going on, but what I mean, John, I guess you could explain what you did, and I can pick up from there if that's okay, because after all, you did it with.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, what I thought that there's a tremendous amount of information that we've covered, and it's really hard to get your hands around it. At least that's what I felt. So I thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity to call in the AI cavalry and see what we can do. So what I did was I took the charge as per our website, or actually it was slightly updated, the updated version of the charge for the committee overall, that is. And I took Jess's framework, and I basically took the report to the select board, which was done, I think, day before yesterday. I'm not quite sure when it was done, but
yeah, 2 days back.
I put that in the mix and said to AI, could you produce a report based on this? And I gave it some parameters and a viewpoint, if you will. And this is what it came up with, essentially, although we both, I've edited it slightly, and I think Jesse's edited it slightly by, for example, incorporating some of Janet's suggestions on wording for the deficit, the structural deficit, and the well, anyway. So this is, and what you'll notice on this is all the numbers have been left out. These numbers actually are there. They're in the largely in the document, the presentation. I think it's about 30 slides, maybe, to the select board by the probably Chaz and Melissa and company. And I think that the AI has a hard time pulling numbers out and doesn't want to pull out an incorrect number, and more to the point. And so they leave them all blank. So one thing that we need to do, if we like the point, you'll see this, it'll say square brackets, X million dollars, and that obviously needs to be filled in. But I think it, rather than worrying about that level of detail at this point, the question is the structure the right kind of structure? Is there anything in this document that we don't like, we would like to edit out, or just edit, and go from there? So basically the idea is it's a first draft, and it's certainly I find AI does this. I've used it many times to organize large amounts of data. And this is, I think, from what I looked at it, the AI came up with a fairly reasonable approach with that input, with that level of input that I've described.
Jesse, could you go back to sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm going.
Because
Yeah. I was just getting started. Two quick things I want to say while I'm getting my sharing working here. One was that thank you, Nicole, who's behind the black screen over there, for posting the most recent document that I think I sent out last night at like 10:30. Thank you. That's really nice. I appreciate that because I thought it was still the old one. That opened it. I said, wow, this looks like the one I sent out like 10:35 last night. So maybe you did it first thing this morning. And Nicole, thank you for doing that. Okay. And then the second thing is I'm going to share it. Yeah. Let me just go to share. Yeah. Sorry about that, Janet. I had it. I wasn't sure which screen. I wasn't sure which screen I was sharing, so I wanted to be careful there.
it was there and then it was gone.
No. It'll
I
come.
didn't see it at all because it wasn't there the last time I looked last night.
I understand. Let me put it up on this other screen so I can see it at the same time. I'm going to do it one more time. Sorry, I moved it to another monitor. So hopefully this will show up. And if it doesn't, you'll tell me. 1 second here. Let's see. It's not showing full on my screen. That's the thing.
It's starting to.
Okay. Oh, here it is.
There it is.
Yeah, it's coming. Let me make it bigger. Yeah. So this is the copy I sent out. Okay, how's that? Better?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So okay, and good morning, Chess. I saw you join while John D was talking. Welcome. I just wanted to say like two things, I guess, at this point. One is that I had already started prior to calling John Doggett yesterday morning early. And so we sort of talked and met all during the day, which I appreciate his generous time that he provided me. I had already started like writing a whole section together with what Janet gave me of this report using the other framework. And again, I was groping a little bit as how are we going to get all the data in here? And a person in the community called me and said, oh, Brookline.News has an article about the meeting of the select board. And I said, what? Because I was looking for that everywhere and I couldn't find the recording or anything like that. And suddenly Brookline.News, thank God for them, had a link to the whole 33 slide deck that I'll just make a comment. I mean, our committee didn't know about it. I don't even know if ERSC knew about it, but the select board had got blessed by seeing that report. And the next day, Brookline.News published it, which was amazing because I went through that and I said, oh my gosh, a lot of the information that it's all about the town, not about the schools, because the school part isn't out in public yet. It'll come soon. Soon could be a week or a month, whenever it is, but I'm focused on the town subcommittee. And there we had it in 33 slides, a ton of the information that I thought would be part of our town subcommittee report, which is do we need an override or not, and how do we get here? What challenges is the town facing? So I want to first thank Melissa, Charlie, Chaz, the team, Lincoln, the team for putting that deck together because it really combines a lot of the things that we've talked about. There's some things like what services might get missed and other things that are not in there, but we only had from yesterday morning when the Brookline.News article had until this morning to get this far. And so I'm feeling a lot more, I'll say energized maybe, not groping around as much, how we're going to get the data together and hopeful that now with the data published in the public domain, we can, with Melissa and Charlie Young and Lincoln's help, move a lot of the, the physical dollar data into a format like what we're going to show here, or in another format, but at least it's all there. And, it's much more, I think, than most people in Brookline want to read about how did we get into the fiscal situation we're in? What challenges do we face according to what pathways we take? And should we or should we not be advancing a recommendation for an override? So,
yeah.
So let me take you on a quick view of this. And then the plan, I think, is to not wordsmith it, as a group of 10 people here or something, but to make some, as John Doggett said, to make some decisions about whether this is taking us in the right direction. I'm happy to like mark it up as we're going or something like that, but I don't think this one is editable, but I can open up one that is in my copy or something. But this, if we start going there, I can certainly, again, because of OML situations, we can't really have a town subcommittee meeting like tomorrow and work privately on this, but certainly onesies, twosies together, two of us or two of us at a time can meet without causing any issues and hopefully wordsmith this thing further. So let me just, if it's okay with you, I guess we should just take I'm not sure how many people other than John Doggett and I had a chance to read the whole thing. In fact, after John and I spoke the last of multiple times yesterday, I sat down until 10:30, 11 last night and was typing into this thing until I sent it out. So basically the executive summary talks about where the committee came from. It is not talks about how, again, without much detail, about how we decided to split the committee, the big committee, into three, and then briefly discusses who's on this committee, along with Chaz and the larger team. I apologize for not having Ann Braga's name. I know you've been attending all these town meetings, Ann, and I should put it in. So we'll leave that. It's in the minutes that we're going to take care of that. And I also apologize in a sense for calling Charlie Young the finance guru. It was late, I was tired, and I didn't have time to look up his official title, but he's certainly a financial guru. So I will make sure that gets changed, Charlie Young. So I mean, even if even if that's your new title, I think I want to be respectful. So I apologize for putting that in. I'll update it to your actual title. But we're all human. We're having fun on ERSC subcommittee for the town, right? All right. So basically, I also want to point out that anywhere, and again, we can discuss this, anywhere it mentions schools, I eliminated it. So when John put this together using the charge from the ERSC homepage and the information that I built for the framework last time, and having the tool extract information from all 33 slides and combine the whole thing together, it obviously picked up pieces where it's at the town and the school. But because number one, we don't have any data from the schools yet, and it's number two, it's not our town subcommittee job, and number three, they're going to be merged at some point when, I have to say, the Bernard Green and Chaz Carey level, the whole three committees are going to have to work to put their report into some umbrella report or some grand summary with three reports inside there. So I felt that I didn't want to mix up the school details with the town. It's almost like, and again, I'm happy to discuss it and be taken off the hill I'm on right now, but it's almost like there's no school in the budget, which from the town standpoint is fine because yes, it's an expense. It's an expense like others, but I didn't want to start adding a lot of specifics about the school situation in the town subcommittee because that's a Sadaf and her committee thing. So, but overall, the great situation, the situation that we're in is that from an information standpoint is that Chaz, Melissa, and the team have put together a budget forecast that is town-wide, including the schools. So when we talk about a structural budget gap and beyond what Brookline.News said, 15 million or whatever it is, we can put that number in there and we're comfortable with that number from the town subcommittee side because it does include all expenses in the schools, all expenses in the town, including the school, just not mentioning the schools yet till we know more about what's going on. So so we have one about the structural budget gap. We have another one about without any corrective action, there would be either service reduction, staffing cuts, or both, actually. And when we talk about curtailing, I went through this whole thing and edited it, John, last night for wording and stuff like that, as you and I spoke about it anyway. We probably want to list some of those core services, and I think Chaz had shared that with us at a prior set of meetings, and so somewhere down in the document, it might be important. I think it is important to list what the core services or programs that might be cut either way, or certainly cut if a full override doesn't pass, or if no override passes. And then the proposed override covering the deficit, restore and preserve situations and stuff like that. It's important that we point out that we've done some work on this side, presumably because we can generate more revenue on the town, even though it's small potato money, I think, relative to what the schools could do from a revenue building perspective. But we have those numbers. I think it was $350,000 odd or something like that, which are obviously not enough to close a over $10 million gap. And based on all the information we saw, the only real option we have is to present an override to the voters. Of course, John Mansquire had mentioned, the option of not doing anything, and we'll have to discuss that. But I think based on what we know so far, unless we want to really fall off the cliff, I think is how Chaz has discussed it in the past with us, we're going to need additional revenue. Okay, so section 2 is talking about the purpose of our subcommittee and really wanting to be data-driven and objective recommendations, meaning that they all have to have reasons behind them. It just can't be our, talking and thinking about it. It has to have the data. And so this is coming from, a lot of it will come, the actual data will come from this 5-year plan. The link to that plan, by the way, before I'm just going to jump down and come back up again. At the end of this document, here, appendices to be compiled, I actually linked it from here. I didn't know where it's around anywhere else on the internet, so I'm hosting it on my own website right now. I mean, at jessehefter.com. And when it finally loads, Adobe's opening it up. So the whole, again, if somebody feels I should move this somewhere else, it's in the public domain. And if you know how to get into the details of, jessehefter.com, but I needed it somewhere immediately, and I couldn't find it anywhere else other than the link that's on. I guess I could get it from the link that's in brookline.news. Yeah, I'll switch it to that. Again,
it's also in Budget Central on the town's website. So
Budget Central on the town's website.
No.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have known that. Like, you know what I mean? That's true. Thank you, but I didn't know. So I mean, I tried to be as expedient as possible just to get something. Just a link in case somebody from our team needed to look at it and didn't know where to go. Because like, how would you know where to find it? So, yeah, who was speaking? Was that Ann?
Nope, it's Melissa.
Oh, Melissa. Oh. You know what? If you don't mind putting in the chat or emailing me the link that you want me to use, I'm happy to switch it. Okay, I mean 100%. I just put it there somewhere temporarily.
That's fine.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, so I'll leave this up for the moment, but go back to the I think it took me out of the document. Yeah, it did. Okay, anyway, but the link is there, and Melissa will give me a town-centric site rather than Jesse-centric site. Okay, no problem. Again, it's in the public domain anyway. All right, so getting back to the section on methodology, in terms of Chaz had actually lined a lot of this up with us in an earlier presentation, looking at the forecast, the budgets, benefit costs, revenue. Melissa had given us a lot of information about that as well. Looking at structural and fiscal pressures, looking at recurring versus non-recurring cost. We need to think about a menu of cuts potentially. Looking at revenue alternatives, benchmarking us against comparable municipalities. And then we'd want to look at, if an override passes, if the override fails, what do we do with reallocating without any new revenue at all? What's going to happen there? So when we start looking at, as like John Doggett suggested about the financial things here, I had started actually interleaving like whole slides from that deck into the report, into another version of this report that I have. And we should, sort of consider part of that, potentially, because it's going to have to get lifted. And so either we on the volunteers on the town subcommittee are going to start pulling up that green slide deck and then, patiently and carefully putting the numbers in, or Melissa, you or someone from, your team and us could discuss, towards the end of this call, what the action items are going to be in terms of if we're going with a report structure like this, how we're going to get the data in there. I think pasting pictures of the slides is not the way I'd suggest, because it's very hard for anybody else who wants to use the numbers to utilize them, because then they have to retype them in. It'd be a lot easier if we put the numbers in here in a way that if somebody wants to select them, they actually can take them and stick them into a sheet or something and do what they want with them, because they're public domain anyway. So, and there's also a lot of detail. So we need to maybe determine a balance between putting in very complex set of Excel in this part of the document. The whole 5-year forecast is available as a link, so someone can get that and do anything they want, to look at it in great detail. Here we're basically saying, our gap is because here's our projected revenue, here are projected expenditures, and here are our gap. Sort of straightforward. Revenue minus expenditure to compute the gap. What's driving this are fixed cost growth that are exceeding the 2.5%. Anywhere there were acronyms, I've typed them in everywhere, because not everybody is as familiar to this, and someone sees it from just outside of finance and they have no idea we're throwing around these acronyms all the time. So fixed cost growth, a decline or exhaustion of one-time funds, ARPA and ESSER, again, I put all the information in there. There's going to be a bigger section, I think, than we have currently on free cash, because as John Doggett and I discussed yesterday, it's thrown around a lot as if we have a pot of gold somewhere. That is, Janet, you've mentioned it as well. It's the word free. It seems like we have nothing else to do but count it and then spend it. And so it'll be important for us to discuss what parts of free cash because are absolutely required, and which are being controlled. Again, I only learned this in the last week or so, talking to people again. Which ones are being controlled by town policy, in which case select board or others could change the policy and perhaps utilize that free cash. In the list of 6 that were in the green slide deck, the one was Affordability Housing Trust. That was through a policy. So if we needed money and we wanted to take, instead of putting the money there, put it into our deficit, as far as an asset that we could use to pay down our deficit, that might be an alternative. I mean, I'm not saying that's what I'm suggesting we do today, but the select board probably, was thinking these things as they heard, as they looked at the 5-year projection. And then limited growth and revenue. I mean, new growth, in terms of even, with Chestnut Hill West and other things, we can discuss that. I think it's in Janet's discussion. Are years and years and years away, maybe a decade or more if it happens. And we don't know what the bigger picture will be in Brookline, even when something like Chestnut Hill West comes in. It could result in other not unintended consequences, but consequences like growth of families could generate more children, could generate a issue with enrollments going up, which would then cause us to maybe outstrip our capacity, which means then we need to look for borrowing money again to build a bigger school or expand a school. And then there's transportation, because there's no real school right there in Chestnut Hill West. I mean, it just keeps going, it has ripple effects. Okay, and then we don't know what's going to happen with state aid, et cetera. We're trying to, John Doggett and I'm trying to find all the little details that we could put in here that show that we've, our town subcommittee's been doing our homework. And fixed cost, as Melissa has taught us in some of the information she's shared, continue to outpace levy growth in terms of the Prop 2.5. And then I put Gelbart here, Janet. Obviously, we'll take this out at one point, but I wanted to indicate to people where the information you provided is. This may not be even in the right place in here, but I appreciated it when you sent it. I read it as soon as you sent it. I think it's very clear and suggests that we should get you to add more information to this report from your reservoir of knowledge.
Basically, Jesse, it wasn't my reservoir of knowledge. I sat with my version of the town's financial plan and looked at the update Melissa gave us, which was pretty close with just one major exception from what was presented to select board yesterday, and I have that question for Chaz later. So these are the numbers that we present to voters every single year. And the issue, I think, for this report is to encapsulate those important things so that they can read and digest it, and just have headlines as we go. But yeah, I was going blind because the print, the printed version, the print is extremely tiny.
Oh, in the budget information.
in the budget
Yeah,
information.
yeah. I
Yeah,
understand.
but also a lot of the explanations are in that budget document too.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Okay.
if John pulled from all those sources with AI, it's an overwhelming amount of information.
Right. I don't believe we pulled that. I'm not sure, John D, that you pulled out of the budget book for this at this point.
No, I only used the presentation that was given to the select board as the primary source yesterday. But clearly we can add to that and then rerun it and include.
I will,
anything that we think we missed.
and to that point about the comment I mentioned regarding Melissa or Charlie Young helping us to get the data into these charts and stuff like that so that it's all integrated. I will point out that whereas having an AI tool look at those documents as fed in and generating this is one approach. An alternate approach, which I've done and will work, actually, we could try it with this, is if the green slide deck is in a window in a browser, and you ask one of the current AI tools to actually study the PDF that is in the browser window and ask it questions and ask it to generate a full website based on that PowerPoint, it will actually scrape all the data out of the PDF file and create tables, structure for a database, formatting, clickable links, the whole thing. So it's possible, and we might want to try this for the next day or two, to do that. Now that we have it in, open it up as a PDF and then ask the tool to take the data and just build and tell it what kind of tables we want. And it may actually lift the numbers right out of the PowerPoint or slide document and populate them. Then it'll be up for us to just obviously carefully compare each to make sure that it was done properly. So that might be a way of saving us some time too, because they're not like 50 tables we have to do it from. It's more like 7 or 8. So that might be possible. Okay. Anyway, there's the structural deficit part. I'm not going to read it out loud. I mean, it's here. You can take a look at it. That Janet's talked about, and then a comparison of an override with debt exclusion. And again, this has actual real numbers in it and some examples. And so that takes us to and thank you again, Janet, for spending the time to do that. Next session talked about the town operating expenditures, which it picked up was charge number 2 in the ERSC mission statement that's on the website. And so one of the kinds of things we've done to save costs, like vacancy freezes, holding the 6 spaces open in the police department, for example, deferred maintenance, things along those lines. And then potential other efficiencies, consolidating shared services, optimizing energy, non-labor vendor contracts, etc. Overall, in looking at that, at least the analysis shows, and I think this is part of what's in the green slide deck, a modest operating cost savings of just a few percent. So it's not enough to close the deficit. And the idea here is that we want to essentially not persuade or convince, but just demonstrate to the readers of the report, the rest of the ERSC, and then when it goes out wider, that we're going to need to do something more larger in order to close the deficit. And again, health and retirement benefits, a large portion of the budget, and it's rising very quickly. That there's data about that in detail in the 5-year forecast. Aging facilities have increased operating and maintenance costs. We received a letter from the building department on the school side that they need looking for 12.5% increase for FY27 because of exactly this issue right here. Waiting for delaying things that needed to get done, increased cost, and the result of now thinking a little more proactively, as we've been trying each year, but really try to be proactive and then coming in FY27 to get ahead of the curve a little bit, so we're not faced with even bigger costs for delaying things that need to get done. And then salary increases, are obviously another pressure. And just there's no way to solve it without raising more revenue. The third one is about revenue analysis. So this is explaining that the levy property tax is Prop 2.5. There's links here that actually work that take you to MassGov. Here's one on Prop 2.5 levies, another one about debt exclusions. Again, what are the alternative revenues? Local receipts and fees is limited, not enough. One-time funds are committed or running out, and we don't, we're uncertain about state aid or state support. So the a more permanent base will come through the override. The next charge had to do with benchmarking comparable municipalities. Overall, per resident spending, sort of an important measure on this. And again, I took the education one out, but we're not far away. Either some spend more, some spend less, but we're not like wildly in another universe. And that's as it should be. I mean, we're a modern town, like all the modern towns around us. So we're all facing the same modern pressures. Other towns like us in the Eastern Massachusetts have had operating overrides. One was just very recent. I'm trying to remember which town, but it was one like in the last 2 weeks or something. And
it was actually on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and so these are these, as you said to us a number of times, we're not going to we can't hide from this. It's going to happen. It's coming at us, and we need to be we need to position ourselves for success. And success doesn't mean, wild abandon and asking for, $100 million either, but it has to be, but we need to show clearly and to demonstrate, again, it's not to persuade anybody, just to clearly demonstrate data-driven why we're, that we got into the situation and what challenges we're facing, and that the likely or a logical conclusion is that we're going to need to raise more funds, at least on the town side. I mean, I think once the school thing adds in too, between what it will cost to remain level service on the school, between ongoing negotiations for a new union contract, as well as potential desire, again, just desire and aspiration to restore some of the services that the school committee had to reduce last year in order to make the budget. That's going to present some additional pressure on this whole plan. And again, we're going to have to make the same kind of decision as a town into what we can afford. And how much of an override we can ask for that's reasonable. So one of the things that's real important here to point out to people is that the benchmarking that we have done, it's we could demonstrate it with more detail, but really our stress is not due to excessive spending. We're not like out there building gold fencing around every part, but there's structural inflation, there's insufficiency in our revenue. It's not because we're not managing our finances, God forbid, in any way that's not really good. Are there opportunities? Yeah, I mentioned the free cash thing and some of the items that are more that are under the control of the select board through policy that might be able to bring us something bigger than the $300,000 in more revenue. It could bring us several million maybe, but certainly not enough to it'll chip away in a big way, but not enough. The next one is asking for data. A little more data. This was if we're going to recommend an override. So how much are we asking for? So one would be the structural gap for next year. That number is available from the green slide deck. And so, this would cover any recurring things, avoid service reductions. Perhaps, again, we have to, there's nuance here, and Chaz has given us some information in that line. A lot of it has been not repeated, but it is presented in the 5-year slide deck, and then it allows us to start in a more stable way, looking at the budgets for 28 onwards. And then John Doggett and I looked at this, and it seemed like a lot of towns do something like this first year plan. What it will look like in 27, but if it's a 3-year override, there's more to do, 28, 29. But it's important to tell people immediately what's going to happen, at least in the next year. And so, again, I took out the education line. That'll be in their report, but at some point it may merge. So public safety, again, we can break it up between police and fire, no issues there. DPW, the general municipality, and then any stabilization funds, contingency reserves, things like that. And then use of override funds, how we're going to do it. Are we talking about preserving current levels? We're according to, I think, all in all, I think it's clear to say we have no master plan behind the scenes or up front about doing any major expansion in municipality or any large new programs that would require significant funding. So therefore, it's people in the town and reading this will understand super clearly that we're not looking for money in order to do something new. We're looking to, I mean, I guess Chaz, you said, like, we want to survive. We want we need funds to be able to go about our work of maintaining, a efficient and supportive community that provides services that people not only got used to but need. So so that's what we want to be really careful there. In terms of impact on the community, there is taxpayer impact. I put in here a formula that people could use and explain what all the parts would be. What additional tax you'd pay would be your property's value times the amount that would get passed in the override divided by Brookline's total assessed value. And so someone's going to say, well, that's sneaky, Jesse, because how am I supposed to get those numbers? So the override levy is the amount, the numerator here is the amount of the approved override. The total value assessed we can get from assessor's office. They would have this number, let's say, I don't know, $1 billion, $1.5 billion, whatever that is, 10 billion. And then your property assessed value you get from your assessor for your, not your sale value, but the assessed value.
Jesse,
yes.
Just John here. A couple of points, if I may, and I'll start with this one while I'm here, but it's really to sharpen up the document as we move forward. Take this community impact analysis, for example. It's written in sort of general terms, which are hard to translate. And I believe, Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, that there was on the previous override, we had an engine that you could put in the address of your property, and out would pop your increase. Is that correct? My memory correct there?
We provided a calculator, and we'll do that again this year.
Okay, so again, something like that, add to this, provide some really sharp focus. Another point, just going back up to section 6, benchmarking with comparable municipalities. I didn't feed in the documents that we have regarding that. I didn't have time to go look for them, to be quite honest. But that needs to be done. What happened here is the AI engine has gone off and looked at the peer group. It's got its own peer group and it's compared us to that. It's a little bit of a black box here at the moment, but nonetheless, it actually did search the web for some answers, which is nice. But I think, again, we can, with our additional work that we did with the comparable town budgets, comparing our budget to our peers, would really sharpen up that whole section. So there are a couple of things that we need, I think, well, more than a couple maybe, of items that we need to sharpen up these sections if we like the framework, if we like the kind of overall framework that's being delivered here.
Jesse, I would also, when you're looking at the individual taxpayer, I think in the past, in addition to the median single family home, we've done the median condo. You can correct me if I'm wrong, people who've been around long enough, that's sort of lingering in my memory, but there's an awful lot of condo owners and they resent that the whole focus is on single family. So, we have to be aware of people's biases as we show them this information.
Well, this is brand new. So, I mean,
right. No, I would just make a note.
Oh yeah, we'll fix that. We'll fix that. Yeah, we'll look for your guidance, obviously, from anyone on the group. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, when we say homeowners here, for example, we could list out, that it includes condos and all other kinds of properties that are they're tax paying. Of course. Thank you, Janet, for that. I'm making some notes here. John will probably catch it. The AI transcript will catch it. John will catch it in the minutes. And this may not look the same, when we look at it next week, for sure.
I also have a question which came out of my looking at the slide deck last night. Recently, our overrides have been, it's going to be $12 million, and this is the breakdown year by year. in looking at the numbers, it seemed to me that the numbers I've seen are all for a year one. And I'm wondering if Chaz can clarify that, because it will make a difference in our deliberations and also in the report if we're going to show how it changes.
You're right, Janet. This time around, what we've recommended is a number that is stable across all 3 years. Historically, we have recommended phased overrides. This
Right.
time, at least on the town side, we have suggested that the levy be raised to the maximum amount, at least on the town side, in year one. And what that does is it creates an override stabilization fund with the small amount of funds that we are not using in FY27 that we will be using in 28 and 29. Basically creating a buffer for that 3 year period that ensures that we're not in a situation like we've been in from FY24 to 26, where even with a generous override from the voters year over year, because of these issues like healthcare and collective bargaining, we've been having to make cuts. And I think, some of the feedback that we've gotten from the community has been, if we gave you all this money, why are you still cutting services? Like, if what's to stop you if we do another override from putting us in the same position where you're still saying, well, sorry, we have to cut services. So building a stabilization fund into the override allows us to control for those issues and sets the table for this discussion in, after FY29 and into FY30, when hopefully we will have a better sense of where Chestnut Hill West is, and when that's coming online, we'll have a sense of, with our pension obligation hopefully being satisfied or close to satisfied, how that money is being used. That will allow for a different level of discussions to take place in terms of how we meet our structural gap going forward. And we'll have a sense of where that structural gap is and how, because of the stabilization fund and how it was or wasn't used. So that's the recommendation that we're making currently.
And does that conversely mean that the whole impact, if the override were $12 million, would hit my tax bill now, whereas in past years it's phased in slowly? Because people are very concerned about that number, which makes me extremely concerned about the estimates of how high it's going to be, because it's not going to be 5 million, 5 million, 5 million. It's going to be 15 million right off the bat, and that hurts.
That's why I think we need to have that. That's where we need to have that
Right.
discussion.
And I would
That's where we
also,
are now, but we need to talk about capacity to pay, willingness to, accept
Yeah.
that, and the kind of balance, how that works. We could design this as a tiered override on the town side. But we'll see.
Yeah, and then the other thing, and I don't know if it's at the end of your document, Jesse, but I think in addition to anything the committee, and this is the committee as a whole, recommends in terms of an override now, a section on what we think the town and the schools need to look at going forward. For example, what do we do with that big pot of funds we're not going to have to put into the pension fund in several years? Would it make sense? I don't know if there's any law that says this is what you have to do to meet the other unfunded liability, but could we give ourselves some insurance by pulling a portion of that off to meet the structural needs, but still being committed to reducing the unfunded liability for OPEBs? That kind of recommendation, I think, would be very helpful to come out of this committee, so that you're not starting from ground zero, but you have something to look at, the way people keep looking back at what BFAC recommended, much of which never got put into place.
Okay, thanks, Janet. Chaz, just to help me understand this, I read through the 33 slides in the forecast like 4 times yesterday in the morning. I mean, I put everything on, I put my life on hold to read that, because I said I had no idea this was out there. I didn't know where to find it, and suddenly, I think I said this before you joined, that I only found out about it because of Brookline.News article, and it had the link in paragraph 2 or 3, and then that's it. I turned off my phone and read through. I didn't pick up on this comment about it's for first year, and then we're going to have a stabilization fund for others. I'm looking at slide 29. It says potential contours of the override. It looks at departmental ask versus currently allotted. And on the other page as well, where we're talking about it, didn't mention this thing about the stabilization, that the override in year one, I mean, we'll talk about it in this report. Definitely, now that you've educated me, but that the override in year one would be at some maximum level. What that will be, we should put in here. You know, if it's 6.6 or something more, and then what we estimate or prognosticate or predict the extra or whatever surplus will be, that will somehow be placed somewhere safe for 28 and 29, and what that amount is. I mean, that's not anywhere. It's not in those slides.
And that's a part of that is because we wanted to talk about the broader contours of the asks themselves, and we wanted to get the select board's feedback on that before talking more about structure, right? You know, both how the ballot question will be phrased to the voters and how it will be implemented. So those were the questions that we were seeking feedback from the select board on, as well, and that we will be seeking feedback from this body on. You know, I think that's the rationale there, is that we wanted to clearly identify the needs. I think just the fact that so many of the needs are acute, you know, the sort of counsels us towards this structure, because year one is going to be high, you know, I mean, higher than it was in year one of the first year of the most recent override cycle, kind of no matter what. The thought was we should look at that excess capacity that won't exist in FY28 and build it into FY27 so that we have that
Right.
excess capacity for use. So that was it was the discussion sort of at a theoretical level at the select board, but it is something that we mentioned at that, you know, in the presentation itself, with the board, that we wanted to talk about that with this committee.
And I picked up on it just because of the huge amounts in there for police and fire. Our immediate need is how I read it. You couldn't phase in, if you tried to phase in, for example, the overtime for fire, it wouldn't resolve the problem. You'd still be dipping into where you're going to get it. So just the way I read the numbers Chaz presented, I couldn't see how you divide by 3 and get where you needed to be next year.
Right. Okay. So that's upcoming. In the interest of time, we've gone through a lot of material here. Let me just quickly skim over the last couple of parts of this, and then get some feedback, and let's decide as a group what our next step's going to be for next week. And I'm going to say, just parenthetically, if because we're not going to meet after the 18th, I think, then the following week is I think Christmas would be that following Thursday.
Right.
So if we, I mean, I'm going to just throw this out here. It's still early enough if we need to have a second town subcommittee meeting early next week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, to get together again on this report and get something more done. But it puts a little more pressure on us. But to meet again as just the subcommittee plus Chaz and his whole team and everything, if we need to, if we decide we want to go in this direction and get more done and then meet again, we could meet again before the 18th. I mean, just something to think in the back of your mind. Again, we'll keep it to an hour. I really firm about that, so that because everybody has lots to do each day, but we could do that. And you know, if we don't want to wait until picking this up again in January after next week, it also gives us some an additional firm commitments about when we're going to have something done sooner, so we are not waiting until a full week today to see where we are with this. Okay, anyway, support for vulnerable populations, absolutely incredibly important. And then here's that part about the long-term outlook. It does recommend, it picked up on recommending establishing a small override stabilization fund. Small, I didn't know what that meant. So that needs a whole bunch of information, because again, there'll be people out there that'll be a little quizzical, the eyebrow raised. What do you mean? How much money? How will it be spent? Where would it be? What's going to look like in those years? So this is where we could, add the stuff that I think Janet and Chaz were discussing. The 3 scenarios: that it passes, it fails with no override, and some reallocation with no new revenue. What could happen? These can change. I mean, these were what John Doggett was able to have it create in here. And again, the FTE for reductions are obviously just not names or departments at this point, just numbers like that are in the slide deck, and what the essentially reductions would result in. I'm not going to call it savings. This affects people's lives, but it's basically reductions, meaning savings. And then following our conclusion, there is a structural deficit. We're not getting away from it. An override is probably the most responsible way to get this back. Lots of towns are doing it. Brookline's doesn't have a special, potion we can pour on town hall building and spray on the front door, and suddenly it goes away. So we need to be, strong. Our recommendation might be, a single question. We'll get to that. The stabilization fund that we talked about, and again, being completely transparent, providing places where people can find, like Melissa mentioned, the budget website, for example, for reporting out what the revenues are from the override as they compare to everything else, and maintaining accountability. There's some appendices it picked up on, and that's where the slide deck comes again. We need to discuss how we're going to get that in, that discuss the calculations of the deficit, the cost drivers, potential service costs if it fails, the first year allocation, long-term planning, summary of the cost-saving measures that we've already done or that will be done either way, that Chaz has shared with us. And then John Doggett mentioned the important thing about having some more specifics there about the comparable communities. So this is what we put together just, between last week and then yesterday. Again, leveraging a lot the slide deck. So the timing was just incredible. Any comments from people before we decide, what our next plan, what our next step is here?
I would take a stab at trying to go back to your framework from last week, Jesse, and see if there are other definitional things like free cash that I can start to write out. I don't want to commit to anything, but we'll see how many of those I can, just from what I know and using the budget book and all the information we have, get some more writing done.
Okay. Does, this is open to people more than just on the subcommittee, but the folks on the town side as well. As a framework, assuming we bring in all the data from the slides that are relevant and things like that, does anybody have any, strong feelings about this is not the way to go, or that this thing really needs to come at it completely differently than what we're presenting this morning?
Jesse, may I chime in? John Van Scoy speaking up here. Quickly, I'm so in awe that you and John Doggett and Janet got us this far. At the same time, I took a look at it this morning and I sent you some bullet pointed questions, which I now have shared with the other members of this subcommittee. The gist of it is one of the, I would call it sort of a limitations of AI is that ultimately, by using AI to comb through the information that we're combing through, is going to come from the town administration's work. And that's, we don't really have any resource other than that. And so I think the report that has been put together that was shared this morning, who would we check that with to make sure that the information in it is accurate? Well, of course, we would go back to the administration. So we don't want to just kind of take a look at the same subset of information and come to the same conclusions without taking this any further. So my suggestion as to how this committee can take things further than what the administration would be, providing as a basis for an override, is to ask some questions such as, and then I enumerated a few of them in this email that I've shared with everybody. And so I just want people to hopefully find that email that I just sent out useful, and maybe add their own thoughts as to what is the added value of this committee's work that can go beyond well, the numbers say this, the numbers, here are all the numbers, and the numbers say we're going to need an override of around 11 million or whatever it might be, or else we'll be in deficit. That only gets us so far. And so I've tried to suggest how we could, as a committee, take things a little bit further so that people looking at the override question have a sense of, is this basically a statement of inevitability that that we're going to be facing this kind of an increase, let's say every 3 years, for as far as the eye can see, or are there paths that can take us in a different direction? That's all.
Yeah, I just saw your email show up at 10:01, so I will take a look at it. Obviously, I didn't see anything earlier. I apologize. Right up until 9, I was on other things. So
Yeah. I hope I used the correct, email address.
I
for
just
you,
saw it
but-
show up on my private one, not the,
Yeah.
on my personal one, not at PSB. So I'll have to look at PSB if you sent it over there. So
Yeah.
no problem. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I'll look at that.
Jesse, on that subject, do you have a preference for which email we use? Because you publish the one at PSB, but which one will get your attention sooner?
I bounce it back and forth all day long. I really don't know how.
Okay.
A year and a half into it, I am still completely flummoxed. Every day I'm being told I send it to you, and then I'm looking at one, I'm looking at the other. Yeah. I mean, because I was appointed to the Expenditures Committee as a delegate from the school committee, I've been trying to keep it all on the school committee side. However, it's, but sometimes things get sent to there. Yeah. And Janet, I appreciated that you sent your input back to me there, because I was looking for it there and I saw it there and then I used it from there. So
We
yeah.
could send it to both, except that.
No. Just keep it on try to keep it on the
That's
PSB
so
side of it. If you have like a private discussion you want to send it to me at regular Gmail, that's fine too. I look at both, but as connected as I try to be, I also am intentionally disconnected for parts of every single day, just so I can keep sane. So I, need time to think. So yeah, whichever one,
Okay.
PSB is probably better. Okay. I mean, it's getting a little bit later now.
It's John Doggett here. A question for John Van Scoyer. John, it's a great chart. Thank you. I've got it up in front of me, your email. You mentioned the FY22 Collins Center report as being the source, which is great. I noticed it's single family. Do you have similar tables for condo and multifamily, which I think we normally track when we look at tax rates and that kind of thing?
I don't have them, no. But what you see in front of you is what was in the Collins Center report that was done for Belmont, and by fortunate coincidence, one of the tables happens to include Brookline and a bunch of other communities that I think would be seen as comparables to Brookline, and the key bit of data there is that the average tax bill as a percent of income turns out to be higher in Brookline than in any of these other communities in the table.
Much higher, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because our per capita income is relatively low compared to other towns.
And a lot of that is because of the number of transients and students. So it's really hard to figure out who the taxpayers are. Half of the people who live here are renters, but they still show up in those income tables. So
yeah, that's a point that is often made, and it's it's indisputable. But I have a feeling somewhere there's a number that just looks at the average income of property taxpayers, for single family homes or condos, or both. And so we get to a more accurate reflection of how we compare to other communities.
So Jesse, to your last question as to where we go from here and if we're going to meet again before Thursday, or how we're going to continue, which we can discuss next week over the holiday. But for next week, if you wanted to meet, I could do Wednesday morning or anytime Wednesday, but Monday and Tuesday only available in the afternoon.
Well, I guess the first question is there a desire that, or
Yeah.
an idea that that we're sharing now to discuss. We're discussing whether or not it makes sense reconvene prior to Thursday. We're going to meet Wednesday, probably not.
Yeah,
But Tuesday may be better. If most of the people just can't, their schedules are packed already, I'm happy to just let it go till Thursday, not a problem. What I want to make sure we do, because again, I'm not sure the overall schedule here, but I'm personally feeling that, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, that we really want to have this report wrapped up fairly soon, rather than like still working on this end of January or something like that. And that'll be here, unfortunately, the end of January will be here like tomorrow. I mean, it's just, that's the way the clock seems to be spinning right now. So I really, and unless there is again, Chaz and your team can correct me here, unless there's like going to be another forecast of the, that's going to replace the 33 slides that were presented to the select board 2 days back, unless there's going to be like a redo of that with all new data and more stuff happening in the next 2 or 3 weeks, which I doubt. I mean, I think this is the forecast. We should be able to leverage that to get this done. I mean, the other two subcommittees have other challenges, like Sergio's going away, and Sadaf and her team are waiting for Bell and Company to produce their information. It'll appear when they're ready. But we have the data now, and so I don't really want. I feel we can get the town subcommittee's report done, fairly sooner than either of the others. It's not a race, Godfrey, nothing like that. Just that we have the data. We just need to, push the vehicle forward over here. So, and so that's why I feel that if we can significantly upgrade this, assuming that the structure is okay with people, get some upgrade to this between now and next Thursday, that'd be great. And how we want to track that we're doing that between now and next Thursday. Chaz, you didn't raise your hand?
There's no subsequent, the next big publication for us is the budget book,
Okay.
the financial plan, which will be in early February. And that's going to be based off this forecast. Some of these numbers may change. For example, we'll get what the governor's budget is. We publish based on the governor publishes her budget. So once we get the initial figures, we're kind of off to the races. But there will not be there will be no seismic changes. This is what it is.
All right. So let me suggest the following then. Again, I want people to have things that start around 10-ish, and they might be running late already. So let me suggest that without hearing any significant critique of this kind of summary that's been created at this point for the framework of our town subcommittee report, I'm going to assume we can proceed with the general structure that we see here, where there are some there were some comments made. I think John Doggan made to sharpen some areas here. We need to rearrange some things. We need to bring the data from the slide deck where relevant into the report, and hopefully if we can do, I'm going to hope to get that done together with other members of the subcommittee and draw on Chaz's folks as required, as faithful partners with us, and we'll hopefully have something out earlier than next Wednesday night at 11:35 in the evening, so that people can take a look at it a day or so in advance at least, so that there's we can have a discussion about where we've gone and what still needs to get done. But I'm feeling a lot better about the fact that we've got some structure around this now, and that we have data sources to make it truly data driven in terms of the analysis. I did see your bullets right now, John Van Scoyoc. Thank you, and I will carefully think about those, and then I'll probably, again, because OML restrictions, I'll reach out to like individual subcommittee members after this meeting to sort of figure out how we can proceed on various segments of this. It's only a draft, and there's going to be 150,000 changes in here, but I'm glad that we got to this point. And if there's no new business, we can sort of take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
second,
Ruth Ellen
Second.
and John
Yes.
and Janet,
yes.
John Van Scoyoc.
Yes.
I vote as well too. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Chaz, thanks to you and your team for putting that forecast together. I mean, it was a massive amount of work. Some of it we've seen before, but still getting it all in one deck. Super.
Thanks to
Thanks.
Melissa and
Yeah.
Charlie, and Lincoln, the whole team.
Thank you.
And thanks to Jesse, Janet, and John for an amazing job of getting us one step ahead of where I thought we would be at this point. One
you very
big
much.
step. One big step.
A pleasant surprise. We'll continue the partnership. Thank you. Have a good day, all.
Yeah.
You as
Bye.
well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mhm.